This we just got in, and we put it up on the website as a just in. This comes from the son of the original owner, and this is a 1959 ES-175. Back in '59, Gibson was still a small company in Kalamazoo, Michigan, hand making stuff. There wasn't any like CNC machines. There was things that would make necks 3 at a time, and Steve, who works in the shop, is from Hamer Guitars, and I used to know the guys at Hamer. They bought the old Gibson Kalamazoo replicating machines, and they would make neck. One guy would cut necks, and there would be 2 other replicators with blades on them that would also cut necks. That was as high-tech as it got. And then, of course, each neck would go to a station, and they would hand sand them down. But Gibson back in those days used the finest woods, only finishes with lacquer on it. These were things you saved up for, and a Gibson was an expensive guitar. '59 was also a transitional year. It was pre-Beatles. In America, there was like Little Richard and a lot of guys that were making R&B music, but it wasn't widely known to the American audiences. Elvis brought it forward and did a lot of music from black artists that was obviously hits. And then the British invasion came later and they brought forth that. But '59 was really more Paul Anka. Elvis was there, but it wasn't the huge boon yet in rock and roll. Solid body guitars were selling well, like this 1959 Les Paul. And if you had, and this is a replica, but if you have a 1959 Les Paul Standard, they're a very expensive guitar, well over $250,000. So at the same time, a Gibson ES-175 was as much as the Les Paul in the day. Now, they made ES-125s, and in this model was more of a student thing, but this ES-125 was still a professional level guitar. It was as wide as the 175s, didn't have a cutaway, which cost more, had the cheaper P90 pickup, the humbuckings cost more, you only had one pickup, and less trim. This has a bound neck, this does not. This has a gold decal on the headstock, and this guitar, if memory serves, has that nice pearl inlaid, and then you have that little flourish on there. You also have the 3 on a side tuners, the individual tuners. There's a lot of things that went into this, little details, and all were super high quality, unlike the mass-produced guitars of today. Then you would buy a 175 in Sunburst normally, and if you told a friend, I went to buy a 175, he would say, oh, cool, and he knew you were buying a Sunburst guitar. But to get a N, a natural, you had to have wood that was flawless, and honestly, anybody that's dealt with wood, finding flawless wood is harder than you think, and so you paid extra to have a natural finish guitar instead of a Sunburst. And you can see on this guitar, this is all the flaws in the wood are covered up by that dark finish. You don't really have to worry about that. And again, Gibson made high dollar guitars, so their quality standards were rigid. And you could hide a lot of stuff inside the black there, but to find a blonde finish. So the point of that is you paid extra for this. And these guitars in blonde have always been sought after for the rarity. I know a lot of collectors over the past 35 years that have tucked these away. Do you know how many they made in 1959? Well, in '59, the Les Paul, which the solid bodies were gaining steam, they made about 1,000 of these. Roughly speaking, in 1959, they made about 1,000 of these. They made 51 of these. There's not one for every state. And a lot of them went overseas. Now, all these years later, a lot of them got beat up. This guitar, this particular guitar, was owned by an owner who took really good care of it. Look at that case. That case has not seen a lot of bars. Somebody who owned this guitar took extremely good care of it. There's no jack damage, which happens a lot when you plug a guitar in. There's no nicks or dings on this. Somebody treated their Gibson with love, and it sounds fantastic. These always came with heavier gauge flat wound strings. These were jazz guitars, and the guys that were really making money in '59 were still reading music, playing jazz music. You notice in the middle position it's slightly nasally because these pickups are out of phase. For you Les Paul fans, that's the Peter Green sound. And it records really well. The bridge pickup on this needs to be brought a little closer. It's really just as we got it, and it's a little less output. But that neck pickup, close to the strings, smooth, and if you like, turn down that tone control. Guitars. You can rock and roll with them. Just look at the bands like Yes, or well, I can't think of any others right off the top of my head, but there's a lot of. Can you think of one? Nuge. He didn't use 175s.
Oh, he had the smaller one.
He had the smaller one. Those are solid tops. So yeah, anyway, this is a gorgeous. One other thing on these blonde guitars, you'll see the F-holes are painted, so if you're ever wondering if it's refinished, right inside there, Gibson would paint the F-holes this kind of white color, and that's to hide the end grain down there. And so the better guitars generally, or the custom colored guitars like blonde, had the F-holes painted, and that's a way to tell if your guitar has been refinished. When you look at this and pull it out of a case that's this clean, there's no doubt that is not a refinished guitar. There's no doubt when you play this. When you see the strings, this guitar is definitely original, and this even has the original flat wound strings on it. So there you go. This is kind of the find of the day, and something like this is a really, really cool guitar, and something that you'll never really own. You just get to play it for a while until you give it to the next guy, because these will outlive all of us. 7th chord. Here we go. Take a bow.